Hey, welcome to Mended Futures, where real stories remind us that broken doesn't mean the end. It's just the beginning of something new.
I'm Evan Bergener.
And I'm Liz Mahan. We're the new season 2 hosts, and together our goal is to share powerful, true stories of resilience, redemption, and hope.
Each week, we'll walk with people through the valleys and celebrate the moments when light breaks through.
Because every future can be mended, one story at a time.
Welcome to the Mended Futures podcast, everyone. Today we have Dr. Doug Waldo from Best Christian Workplaces joining us today. He's a senior consultant and sector leader at Best Christian Workplaces. Doug, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yes, we're so excited. One thing that I'd love to ask Doug before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of how Best Christian Workplaces work and everything is what's something that you have been encouraged by lately? Is there anything that's giving you joy recently?
Yeah, that's an easy one. Just in the last month or so, we finished up the State of the Christian Workplace Report. It's an annual report that we develop and publish to the world to let them know what we're seeing in the Christian workplace. And this past year, we had 441 ministry partners. So those are
Mm,
ministries, family service organizations, churches, Christian schools, all the different types of folks that we serve. 441 of them participated in this, and they invited 40,000 employees of these organizations to participate in the survey. So we collect all that data over the course of the year and then publish sort of the trends and things that we're seeing overall and within the sectors in that report. Well, what was most exciting this time was that we saw the third consecutive improvement in overall engagement
mm,
across the sectors. So this past year, it was 61% fully engaged. Now, the year before, it was 59%, and the year before that, it was 58%. So a continued improvement. Now, for those who might not think 1 or 2% is that big of a deal, when we're talking about inviting 40,000 people who work in
mhm,
Christian led organizations to complete a survey that speaks to the health of their workplace, and when even just 2% say it's a healthier place than it was a year ago, and I'm able to say I am now more engaged than I was a year ago, that math works out to about 800 employees this year that would
mm.
say, I'm fully engaged versus last year. And based on our research, that's just north of $15.5 million of additional capacity put back into the Christian workplace. So we've been ecstatic since that came out, and I'm still riding that high.
Yeah, no, that's really incredible. Yeah, I think it's any growth is really encouraging, but when you break it down and you're like, "No, this is about 800 people," that's really encouraging. So that's really great for the Christian sector. So that's really encouraging. I love that.
And that's 800 lives changed too, right?
Yeah.
Like if work is better, then that also bleeds over into people's lives too.
Mhm.
So I don't want to miss that in those results as well. So kudos to you guys and the work that you all do.
Yeah, that's a great point. These are brothers and sisters in Christ.
Mhm.
These are not just numbers or statistics. These are real people and with real implications for showing up for work every day and bringing your best. So the ripple effect of that,
Mm,
we won't even know that on this side of eternity, but yet it's really exciting.
for sure. No, that's so encouraging too. I love that so much. That's awesome.
So Doug, give us a little bit about yourself. What your life was like before joining Best Christian Workplaces, how you ended up at that role. Give us a little bit of background.
So I've been doing pretty much the same work for the last 30 years, consulting and organizational psychology. Absolutely love it. Felt called to do it. At the time, I served mostly in Fortune 500 and large global government organizations, but doing much of the same work. And my wife made a comment one day. She said, every once in a while, you get to serve a small church or a small ministry. It was a rare opportunity, but she would say, when you do that, you just light up. Why
Mm.
can't you just do that? And I said, I don't think that exists. I
Mhm.
don't think there's a place where you can do just that. I would always do this sort of Robin Hood thing. Like I would go work for a big company and then I would do pro bono work for a church or a small ministry. And then in God's providence and his perfect timing, he put BCW on my radar and me on theirs. And the rest is history, as they say. It was a perfect fit for what God had handcrafted in me, just as a Christ follower and a maturing believer, and someone who did this for a living and really found it to be life giving. And then to see an opportunity to do it in a kingdom advancing, very intentionally kingdom advancing context,
Mhm.
I was hooked. And I haven't looked back since. We're just 4 years in, and I don't feel like I've worked 1 minute since I got here. We can have some pretty long days. Tonight we'll be going till 10 p.m. working with an organization in Indonesia.
Mm.
So we have some long days serving partners all over the world, but it's life giving, and we come back for more tomorrow. It's an amazing job.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm curious, what the differences are because you've worked with both sides, right? Like the more secular business world doing similar work versus kind of honing in on, the Christian leaning side of it. Are there many big differences between what you do?
Yeah, on the larger, bigger picture perspective, there's a profound difference, and it makes all the difference, which is part of why, as my wife would have said, I lit up.
Mm.
Um, and there are a lot of other parts of it that are pretty much the same: the mechanical, diagnostic, the techniques, the tools, all of those types of things that are consistent with organizational psychology, organizational economics, management, training, consulting. All of that still applies, but our lens is very different. It's profoundly different. And in this case, our focus is on equipping and inspiring a Christian leader to build an engaged workplace. And we do that. That's our mission. That's what we wake up every day thinking about. And we do that because of a vision. And we have this vision that says that a Christian led workplace should be one of the best, most effective places to serve in the world. There should be a standard there created by anytime a Christian leader leads in a workplace. And so that fuels us and that drives us. So we may be applying the same technique or the same types of tools, the same types of surveys and things like that. But when the cause and the vision is different, the application is night and day. We're focusing on a level of inspiration that leader has and an equipping that the leader needs so they can fill out the calling that God's placed on their lives to lead. And they're doing it for the kingdom. So how could you not love that job? How could you not
Mhm.
want that?
I love that, and I think it's really important to the work that y'all do, that you're taking care of people who take care of people, making sure that it's a healthy environment, people are feeling poured into and invested in, which I really, really love. I'd love to know because I don't really know this. I know that 518 partners with y'all, and we've enjoyed doing that the past several years. But I'd love to know what it looks like, kind of from step one with Best Christian Workplaces. What does it look like for an organization to partner with y'all, and then kind of identify key areas they can grow in and improve upon, and measuring success in those spaces?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really starts with, do we have the same overall perspective, overall desire? Do we
Mhm.
want that workplace that's going to set the standard? Do we believe it's possible? And we know that any organization can be a flourishing one if we meet the conditions of flourishing. So we have an engagement survey, an employee engagement survey that helps us to look at those conditions. We're looking at 8 specific drivers that over 23 years now of research going back to when we were founded. We know those 8 drivers predict 70 to 75% of all of the reasons that employees engage in their work or not. So overwhelmingly, what makes for a healthy place to show up to work every day, we're measuring in that survey. So when an organization partners with us, they have their employees complete the survey. We get a sense across those 8 drivers, the overall health of the organization, what might be their strengths that we can leverage where they already flourishing, what might be some areas where they're healthy but not quite to flourishing yet, and then what might be some potential areas of growth. Every organization has all of those things. It just
Mhm.
differs in terms of to what degree or to what extent and where they live in the model. But because we have this proven framework or model that we can apply to it, it's a highly validated and a confident lens that we can put on that organization, and then equip those leaders to take those next steps that grow in health.
Something I keep hearing come up is the word flourishing,
Mhm.
flourishing workplace. Can we dig into that a little bit? What does a flourishing workplace look like?
Mhm.
Yeah, great question. So a flourishing workplace, we have this acronym Flourish. And our chairman and co-founder Al Lopez wrote a great book called Road to Flourishing, and it really breaks down each of those 8 drivers, where they came from, what they look like. But just in a quick flyover, fantastic teams. The F of Flourish is the fantastic teams. Do we have effective collaboration in a team setting and with team to team? So departments, do departments act as silos, or do they collaborate well across teams? The L is life-giving work. Do our employees come to work knowing that their own contribution matters? So on a random Thursday afternoon, did it matter that I came today and brought my very best, that I invested my spiritual gifts, my skills, And do I know what's expected of me in doing that? And is that life giving to me? Will I come back tomorrow for more, no matter how rough today might have been? Outstanding talent is the O. It's all about, do we recruit and retain and reward and promote the best possible talent to advance that mission? That gives us a competitive advantage to be able to do the work God's called us to do, because the right people are drawn to us and we can keep them. The U of flourish is uplifting growth. So as the employee invests themselves in their work, do they feel like we're investing in them? Do they feel cared for by their supervisor, nurtured and supported and trained and encouraged to continue growing? And so they're being lifted up in a personal sense, but also professionally, so that they can meet the challenges of tomorrow in the workplace. A rewarding compensation, that's the R of flourish. So simply, it's the overall satisfaction with compensation. So base pay and retirement, benefits, those types of things, paid time off, all of those ingredients that make for financial stability and security now, but also down the road. The I of flourish is actually statistically the most important one, and that's inspirational leadership. We
Mm,
do an annual, what we call a relative weights analysis. We take all these 8 drivers of flourish, and we look at them from scratch each year and look at all this large data set and say which ones are most important. Inspirational leadership is the most important driver across all sectors. And it's really this: does the leader follow Christ as he or she is asking you to follow them? Do they see Christ
mm,
like humility and compassion, the fruit of the spirit? All of these types of things, does that give the employee a sense of inspiration that I want to follow that person as they follow Christ? So incredibly important. Sustainable strategy. All the inspirational leadership in the world might not still move the mission if there's not a coherent strategic plan to harness all of that and move it in a direction. So the S of flourish is sustainable strategy. And then lastly, the H in flourish is healthy communication. Is there an ongoing, healthy, and open dialogue such that employees hear from leaders appropriately and feel heard by the leaders, giving them sense of agency and ownership in the direction and the decisions that are being made? So that's the whole model. That's the flourish model. Whenever we talk about a flourishing organization, they're hitting on most of those, if not all of them. And another bit of encouragement, you asked me at the beginning about that. Um, Last year, 7 of the 8 improved, and
mm.
Wow.
across all sectors. So wow is right. What an encouragement that it wasn't just one area that all of a sudden brought the percentage of engaged up. It was across much of the model, and we're encouraged by that.
That's great news, and I really love, you walking through that, and I hear your a focus being put on, the work that's life-giving. It's people using the skills that God gave them and doing it in a God-honoring way. I think that's something that definitely gets missed in a lot of workplaces. It's just a much different mindset, 360 degrees, and I just really love you all's approach, that you take, so that's incredible, and I'm no surprise that you guys are getting the results you are, given where you're coming from, so that's great.
It's a data-driven process. This isn't a vague, fluffy, general acronym. This is 23 years of heavy-duty research, revalidated every single year from scratch. We do very complicated statistical procedures to validate that this model is what moves the needle across the Christian-led workplace. Um, and I'll tell you this: we don't necessarily, in the everyday interactions, think about each component of flourish. I mean,
Mhm.
we do. That's our job.
Right.
But in the workplace, how you experience flourish are really these 4 indicators, and they come through loud and clear when the flourish elements are there. And they're simply these: energy, enthusiasm, commitment, and passion. When the flourish drivers are there, and employees can't help but be energetic, enthusiastic, committed for the long term, and passionate about living out their calling in the workplace. Those are the indicators of engagement. And that's what we all feel every day, and in the most Christian way possible. We want to be greedy and want more of that, because we know that makes for a wonderful place to work and invest in the kingdom.
No, I love that so, so much. I like how you break it down like that too. That's really intentional how y'all do that. I'd be curious to know I mean, I know you touched on it a little bit, but are there any trends that you're seeing um in the organizations that you're working with that have been a solid, like, we are really growing in this, that excite you for the future of where Best Christian Workplaces is going and what Christian workplaces are doing?
Yeah, there are a couple of things that over the last year that really got our attention in terms of movement. First, 2 areas that have increased in importance recently. So not just we're doing better in them, but they've increased in importance. Back to that relative weights analysis that I mentioned.
Mm,
So inspirational leadership is still the most important. But we're also now seeing two areas. First, healthy communication increasing in importance. It's interesting, a younger generation beginning to come into the workplace has a higher expectation for the ongoing conversation and dialogue between themselves and leadership. So there's this increasing emphasis on voice, having voice in decision making, hearing from leaders more, and not just announcement driven hearing from leaders more. We're not asking for more meetings. It's really more hearing about the decisions and the decision making process in light of the purpose, the shared mission, the shared visions. There's a lot more emphasis on mission, vision, core values, and how each incremental decision that leaders are thinking through reflect those things. So the decisions are an expression of that shared identity, that's mission, vision, core values. So we're seeing an increase in the importance of that. And then secondarily, compensation. Compensation has gone up 3 straight years in its importance. And this past year, the one compensation related question that we asked, that's just simply base pay level, fairness, that rose sharply. And I think that's due in part from the last couple of years of seeing, interest rates being elevated in recent memory, inflation being a little bit more elevated. We're generally seeing it costs more to, or more difficult to get a home. If a younger employees coming into the workplace with school loans, there's the difficulties there, the challenges of, even buying a car. All of those things are more challenging than they were one generation ago. So it's not surprising that we're seeing increasing emphasis on some of these items and why an employee decides this is a flourishing workplace or not. Now, more directly to your question about what's improving, praise God, we're seeing improvement in the communication items. We're seeing leaders increasingly taking it seriously, this need to having an ongoing dialogue, not a limited or finite duration, announcement driven, top down type of communication. There's a lot more interest now in creating psychologically safe environments where people can speak into decisions, feel heard, and again, hear from leaders. So that's also very encouraging. And even though that's just one of the 8 drivers, if communication is increasingly healthy, then we should expect other things will be healthier as well, like teamwork and collaboration, like
mm.
how we handle conflict, like how we derive life-giving work.
Yeah, I feel like that's encouraging to hear. I feel like a good workplace is, in a similar way to a good marriage, like how good the communication is. That's a huge bearing on the experience you're going to have at work. Um, I'm really curious. You were talking about going through every single year and reevaluating what the questions look like, what y'all's approach is. What does that look like? What's the process between like this is working really well, we'll keep this, and this is maybe not performing as well, we'll get rid of it. What are the nuts and bolts to that?
Yeah, so we actually start from scratch every year. We'll take
Mm,
every survey and we don't just look at a single year, we look at a 5-year rolling average. So we'll take the most recent 5 years of data. So you're talking tens of thousands of employees of these Christian-led organizations as a whole and by sector. And we'll look at these 8 drivers from scratch as if we were building the survey today from a blank piece of paper. And we say, do the 56 questions that we're asking, how do they align within these 8 drivers? And are they still loading on the proper driver? Do they still carry a similar weight than they did the last year, which would have been the prior 5-year rolling average? The good news is, well, first, that we're doing this work. I mean, we feel like that's part of our core value of excellence. It's part of us stewarding what we believe is a God-given opportunity, and there's a high bar and high burden that comes with that. So we take that very seriously. We make a significant investment in that annual validation. It's not the kind of thing most people would even ask about, but we care deeply about that. And so from that process, we look at where the items are in the survey and where they might best fit. And again, with a large sample size, we don't see much movement year to year. And we thank God for that. That gives us a tremendous amount of clarity and confidence in the instrument, in its stability. But some of these things do move gradually over time, and that's why we look at it every year. So at even right now, as we've completed now the state of the Christian workplace report for last year, and we published all of those findings, you can at workplaces.org, you can download that for free. It's very interesting, or at least I think it's incredibly interesting.
mm,
A lot of the data, a lot of the statistics we're talking about by sector, but we have not found an item yet that needs to be moved. In the last few years, the survey has been very stable, And we thank God for that. But we're going to look at it, Lord willing, again next year, the same time, with the same emphasis. And if we see need for movement or adding and subtracting to create the best possible instrument, then of course we'll do that.
Well, I think that's great that you guys do that. It's just the consistent pursuit of getting better
Mhm.
and making it the best that it can possibly be. Even if you think you've already got a great process and everything is set up great, why not take a look at it? New, fresh perspectives, new year, new data to look at. And I want to thank you guys for doing that because for the past several years, we've been able to work with you guys. 518's been blessed to be one of the best Christian workplaces. And you guys are just continuously pushing us to get better. And our leadership continues to desire that as well. So thank you guys for being so thorough and for pursuing that excellence.
Mhm.
Yeah, I appreciate that encouragement. Like you all as an organization, we are intensely curious. So a big part of why we take that deep dive is we want to know. We want to know the trends and the movement, and then what are the implications for ministries like your own? Because we know ultimately, and here's what matters the most: you having a healthy place to serve means the people you serve will have a healthier experience in that service,
Mhm, mhm.
and ultimately, that's what impacts children and families and communities, and we are all in for that.
That's so true. I would love to know, I know we're talking a lot about strengths within organizations, but I'd love to know kind of like the opposite side of the coin with that. When you come across organizations where they receive their results and they say, "Oh, I thought we were better in that than we actually scored," or something kind of like that. What kind of encouragement do you give organizations? What kind of encouragement would you give individuals of, "Hey, this is a weakness I didn't know necessarily that we had." How do you kind of equip and empower them when they are aware of those results?
Yeah, I think those words are key. The equip and empower, in our language, it's equip and inspire. That's
Mhm,
our primary focus as we have that conversation. Often, that's the first time an organization has surveyed with us. It's not always just the first time. Some will work through the road to flourishing. It might take 3 to 5 years to get there, and some, frankly, may never get there. But the goal is to equip and inspire those leaders. And so, what we say when we look at the data, no matter what it says, first off, we know a flourishing, insert name of ministry here, a flourishing ministry or flourishing organization is possible. In fact, it's guaranteed if we just meet its conditions. We now know its conditions. The
mhm,
framework, the model, the lens that we're putting on the data, on the experiences that your employees are sharing with us, we now know those conditions. And there's nothing that surprises us in light of how often we do this. So we have a playbook or a roadmap for that road to flourishing. Really, all that differs is where the organization is on that road. So I love Al's terminology in the book, Road to Flourishing. So wherever I am on that road, I'm at a mile marker. And if flourishing is at mile marker 4.25 out of 5, which is kind of our 5 point scale, and if healthy is at 4.0, no matter where I'm at, I really want to just recognize where that is as a mile marker. And I want to chart a course to the next one. I would be humble and curious and then diligent to just make progress in a few key areas. When we talk to an organization, we don't say, here are 12 or 15 things you must do. They
mhm,
might have 12 or 15 things they should do or could do, but we really talk about what would be the 2 or 3 things you must do. Two or
mhm,
three things. What would better look like in just those key areas? Because of the data and the research that we just talked about, the relative weighting of those things. Of course, we're going to go to the sort of the big ticket items first, like inspirational leadership and life giving work and communication. If those things are in place, then we kind of work our way down. And it often surprises folks that things like healthy teams tends to be towards the bottom, relative to having an inspirational Christ-like leadership. So we work our way in that order, and if we can move the needle on 2 or 3 items, then we come back next year and the overall picture has improved. And generally speaking, that's exactly how that plays out.
I think that's a great framework to not just from like an organization as a whole level, but also as an individual level of when you see weaknesses within yourself or within an organization that you're working for, really going deep intentionally with just a couple things so it's not overwhelming and then kind of chipping away. So I like how you're addressing that and how there's kind of core things and then okay, to get 1% better, you can go even deeper and go even deeper. So I think that's really cool that you're not like, "Hey, here's 15 things that you need to grow in." It's how
No.
can we really hone in on these 2 or 3 and be intentional with that. So I love that.
Yeah, in most of our workplaces, it's just not feasible to move more than 2 or 3 culture
Mhm.
related items anyway. That would set ourselves up for failure and discouragement, and that would be the opposite of equipping and inspiring. So We keep it very concise and very specific to what the data is telling us. We say that every survey is data and every data set tells a story. So we're just trying to better understand the story from the perspective of the people who are showing up there and investing in themselves in the work every day. And what does better look like in their, in their minds from their experience? And that may differ by team. We'll drill down to the team level or department level or what have you. And oftentimes you'll see differences there. You might have some teams that are already flourishing. They're already farther ahead on that road to flourishing. So sometimes that's an easier conversation to say, "Hey, we're experiencing parts of this already.
Mm.
We don't have to reinvent something that's already working. Let's just cascade it or replicate it across the organization so that we can all join them on that road to flourishing."
Mhm. And something too is obviously like our podcast at 518 is called Mended Futures, but it's encouraging too, as you're talking, to be hearing about how y'all are being so intentional and how leadership of organizations can be so intentional of what does it mean to take results, make yourselves even better for the future. And like what you said, I like that of it's not just an internal impact, but it's also a client impact or an external impact of your clients are going to feel the culture. Your people you're interacting with externally are going to feel the culture. So I think that's really great what y'all get to do of taking a place that's doing good and then making them even better and being intentional in that. So I thought that was really encouraging too.
Yeah, we often think of this, and we can't take credit for it. It appeared in a Harvard Business Review article, and I think it was almost 30 years ago. It was called the service value chain. It was a really a left to right graphic that showed this chain of events. On the far left, it was a healthy place to work, and then there's an arrow to the right, means a healthy place to be served, whether that's a customer, a client,
Mhm.
whatever. And then farther to the right means mission impact. And so in our case, many organizations before they interact with us, and their default position is they start at the far right and try to impact the mission and or drive mission impact to make the mission or the ministry more sustainable over time. And they have a lot of conversations, a lot of effort is invested there, and that's awesome. But what many fail to understand is we have to work our way to the left and say,
Mhm.
well, what makes for an impactful ministry in whatever context, and what makes it viable over time? There has to be an effective place to be served. That has to have the capacity to serve our clients. It has to have the ability and the resources to do a really good job at whatever God's placed on our heart to do. And to make that happen, we got to go one step back to the left and say, this has to be a healthy place to show up every day
Mhm.
and invest. And when you look at it like that, then all of a sudden the numbers and the statistics, they come into a different frame. And we understand the eternal consequence of getting this right.
For sure. It's giving a deeper why, not just what are kind of like what's the result, it's the why of the result. So I think that's really interesting for sure.
Yeah, and I'd say even anecdotally, my professional career isn't too far along yet, but from what I've witnessed so far, if you serve your people well, they're going to turn around and serve people even better.
Mhm.
So you guys are hitting the nail right on the head in that regard. Doug, if people are tuning in and maybe they want to for their workplace, they want it to become a more flourishing workplace, how would they go about getting in contact with you guys?
We have a website, workplaces.org. There are a ton of resources on there. In fact, there's a little magnifying glass in the upper corner that I love to send people to. Obviously, the website has the typical type of information, but on that or that magnifying glass, they can type in any keyword. Say they have a concern about trust in their workplace, they can type in the word trust. You're going to see volumes of podcasts and resources and guides and how to's to improve trust. And they're going to see those written not from an academic perspective. They're going to see them written about ministries like yours, people who've
Mhm.
been there, people who have gone through that journey on the road to flourishing and in specific areas. Beyond that, of course, there's information on the survey and the other things that we do, like 360 feedback and coaching and consulting and training. And all of those wonderful things, but it's all directed towards answering the question, what would make for an exceptional place to work? It's all driven from that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, if people are interested, absolutely check out the website. Doug, thank you so much for joining us and sharing what goes on at Best Christian Workplaces, sharing some wisdom as well. I really appreciate you joining us and sharing your time today.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It's always a joy to talk about this work. As I said, I don't think I am working. Um, so we have a surprising amount of fun doing this job, but I think it's because we understand why we're doing it and who we're doing it for. And it's a joy to talk about it. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Doug. We appreciate you, appreciate what y'all are doing at Best Christian Workplaces, and appreciate your time. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thanks.
The Mended Futures podcast is a production of 518 Family Services, formerly Patrick Henry Family Services in Lynchburg, Virginia. Our mission is to build communities of faithful relationships that ensure children are safe and families are restored.
Mended Futures are at the heart of who we are, our stories, our hope, and our vision. They aren't just stories we tell, they're something you can help create. When you give to 518, you're not just making a donation, you're stepping into someone's story. You're helping a family find hope, and you're helping our community heal.
Because of the generosity of people like you, reconciliation is happening in our community each day. Our donors further the mission of seeing every child with a thriving family supported by a faithful community.
We want to see Mended Futures for families in Lynchburg, Virginia, and the 4 surrounding counties. So we invite you to check out our website, 518.org/givemended. That's FIVE18.org/givemended. Join us in the ministry of reconciliation.